Hey everyone, what's going on? The Pocket Moggers here, and today I'm going to do a short video talking about two shows. Well, one is a comic and a show, and one was a show that became a comic, among many other things, in both cases actually, um, that I really, really, really enjoy and have just recently noticed a very large connection between these two things. I will, however, mention that for the sake of one of those two shows, I will be keeping the discussion to a bit of a surface level. Mostly because one of those two shows has a popular adaptation going on right now that is still very early in the show's development, and I don't want to spoil anything that would be considered of major importance to people. So the first one here is One Piece, which, as you know, I've talked about a couple of times. It's a manga that then became an anime, that then became a Netflix show, and video games, and all sorts of other things. Anyway, it is about a pirate crew as they travel around the world that they live in on their ship, the Going Merry. Again, I'm trying to be vague One Piece fans. There is so much more going on here. Is that right? On here, on the surface, it's about the pirate crew. There's a lot going on. But it's fantastic. Can't recommend it enough to anybody who's in the mood for that kind of thing. Star Trek TNG was a show in the late 80s and early 90s. I like more of the early 90s stuff. They kind of figured things out a little better at that point, if you ask me. But it was a live action science fiction show about a Starfleet exploratory division vessel. Excuse me. Doing a little bit of check off over there from the original series, Wesseling the Enterprise D and its crew as they explore the Milky Way galaxy. Just like with the Straw Hat Pirates and the Going Merry, that's on the surface. That's the most abridged version of the explanation you can give. There's a lot going on. Yeah, these two shows are the same show. So, obviously, my comparison between the two series was a little hyperbolic. They are different, mostly. The tone surprisingly does overlap sometimes. You would be surprised, given the facade that TNG puts up, the way that it looks on a first inspection of people who are very no nonsense, very professional, very understated. How quickly that can turn, how silly it can get. And same thing with One Piece. It seems pretty silly at first, but it really can get real when it needs to and punch you right in the gut. Um, but having said that, it's also important to note that these two stories are literally science fiction and anime versions of the same tale. The Homeric Odyssey. Not, the greatest guy in history, not that Homer, the blind poet from Greece who wrote Odyssey. We now call it the Odyssey, but when it was written, it was called Odyssey because the term was invented for the book. And the Odyssey stories involve a hero or a set of heroes, in our case, much more so a set of heroes in both series. Although Luffy is definitely, I would argue, Luffy is more of a prominent chosen hero than Jean-Luc Picard, the captain of the Enterprise D, is. And that's a difference in story handling. Shonen anime by by law, if you will, by design, have to have a special somebody who's there to change everything and make everything better for everybody else. Whereas in Star Trek, one of the big arguments in Star Trek is that, you know, it's not that special people don't exist, but what makes those people special is not anything about their circumstances. It's their character. And that is true in One Piece too, but it's a little less subtle in One Piece, I would say. Okay, so jumping back into what I've written. Sorry, guys, had to go on a tangent there. Sorry, folks, had to go on a tangent there. So basically, usually, this Homeric hero is smarter or stronger or something along the lines than your average person. And they set out unto uncharted waters or territories to explore them. Herein lies fantastic creatures and natural phenomenon, sometimes not natural phenomenon, the world has yet to see or comprehend, and our intrepid explorer has to figure out how to manage their way through that sort of stuff. Often, this explorer is a willing participant at first, but usually some form of struggle or conflict comes their way that delays them majorly in their journey, causes them to pivot, and ends up affecting the psyche of this hero. When they go through this, it halts their return back to civilization. Both One Piece and TNG fans, I think, will generally agree that that is the surface, again, very, very, very surface level of what is going on in both of these shows. The Enterprise D is an exploratory vessel, so it was sent out with the consent of its government to go out and explore uncharted territories, whereas the Going Merry and its crew are pirates, so their adventure is much more, I don't want to say much more dangerous, but much less sanctioned. Nobody's looking for them. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. So there's a difference even in the nature of the exploration, but overall, it's got the same thing going on. Well, they have the same things going on. However, the connection between these two titles extends further. Literary tropes are not the only ropes connecting these two vessels. We have some very interesting and eerily similar characters going on here. That's not to say that one is inspired by the other directly. I am not saying that at all. I am just pointing out similarities in characters, some of which extend to classic character tropes that are just universal and therefore aren't necessarily a sign of a deeper connection beyond maybe their job or their past history or something like that. But there are other things, and again, I can't get too far into it for the sake of One Piece Netflix fans, but there are other things that connect these examples of characters that I have brought up that I just simply can't talk about right now. And I encourage a fan of either of the two series to go and look for those bridges connecting those characters. So let's start with the King of the Pirates himself, or the future King of the Pirates himself. Uh, Luffy, Monkey D. Luffy is his full name, is the captain of the Going Merry. He is a bright-eyed, optimistic young man who wants to find the One Piece, which is a mythological treasure, and claim the title of the King of the Pirates. I would personally say that Luffy's greatest characteristic is his mercy. He is kind to a fault and a firm believer in second chances, although he is also a firm believer in kicking your butt if you deserve it. He has transformed his world through his indomitable spirit and charismatic kindness. This is something that the creator of Star Trek, a man that most of you may not know, but if you don't know, his name was Gene Roddenberry, and I think Gene Roddenberry would love Monkey D. Luffy. I think he would think he was just awesome, just an amazing character. So Wesley Crusher here. He is my parallel to Monkey D. Luffy, although they are not emphasized in the same way. Uh, in their series. Wesley was, and I don't think undeservedly necessarily, but I do think a little too harshly, the character of Wesley was criticized by TNG fans and still is criticized by TNG fans. It is a hard pivot from most of Star Trek, which definitely focuses more on adults and the military aspect of what's going on, or the debates about the ethics and moralities of the decisions that are being made. And so I know that having a kid and one of the sons of one of the main officers around does shift the tone considerably sometimes, but kids grow up in Star Trek too. We need to know how they learn their lessons. Well, I think we need to learn how they learn their lessons and their morals just like we do here on Earth right now, you know? Um, and Wesley and Luffy definitely connect and parallel one another with their kindness. They're both kind of gullible. Luffy's dense. It's to comedic effect over in One Piece how dumb he is sometimes. But Wesley is just naive. Wesley just doesn't know the way of the world yet, right? But still, it is a parallel between the two of them. But their biggest connection, the thing that really ties them together, is their kindness. They are kind and they are considerate, oftentimes to a fault and to their own danger, even. Like I wrote here, I find myself frustrated with these guys sometimes. Oh boy, you have no idea, Netflix fans. Trust me. Luffy just makes me, sometimes. But they are the best of all of us and need to be praised more. Their actions need to be praised more. Kindness is what makes us human. Both these characters end up attaining a power beyond their comprehension due to their open minds and kind hearts. And that's all I'll say about that. But it is true. It is their willingness to accept others, to take them at face value, and help them improve themselves. Show them where they can go along and improve alongside with them. That really makes Wesley and Luffy such compelling characters. Wesley, like I said, don't expect Wesley to be featured on the every promotional image for TNG ever. There is a stark difference in how the characters are handled, but they still connect to each other. And their message of kindness and understanding, even if it's not necessarily like sitting down and learning everything about the person and their culture and how they work and stuff like that, but just accepting and allowing them to do their thing is just the central. I think it's the tent pole of both of these shows. The Going Marys Roronoa Zoro. I have to say that real slowly. Infamous pirate slayer and aspiring swords master. Sorry, anime manga fans, but I really can't, I can't talk too much, like I've said before. And the Enterprise D's Klingon security leader named Worf share similar values and personalities that extend beyond I'm the gruff warrior and so I'm quiet and sometimes pushy. Zorro once proclaimed, "Only those who have suffered long can see light within the shadows." Likewise, Worf has attested, "The true test of a warrior is not without, it is within." Both have seen their trials and tribulations as the source of their strength, not a sign of their weaknesses. The contrary nature of their positions in the story, a pirate hunter on a pirate vessel, and a brave, mighty Klingon warrior reduced to a puppet of the Federation's whim, leaves many in their respective universes perplexed. Yes, and all of that is true, but there's more to it too. There is a stringent and often well, not often, but sometimes frustrating honor code that both of them follow that runs counterintuitive to the beliefs of other characters and can cause friction with their crew members, but deep down, both Worf and Zorro are some of the most heroic people on their ship, and you really can't ask for anybody better to have your back. Here we have one of my favorite crew members, Nico Robin. She is the Going Merry's archaeologist. She was an enemy of Luffy and his friends at first, but because of Luffy's mercy and kindness, she turncoated and became a heroic figure, joined the Going Merry. In turn, and I think at least in part as penance for the terrible things that she did, um, she has become something of a mother figure to some of the people on the crew, like the Doctor, Tony Chopper, and often Usopp and Luffy too. Um, she is an elderly sister figure to Nami, who is the navigator on the ship, and she's one of the few people Zoro seems to actually enjoy talking to. Um, Her insight is often valued because she is looking at things in a way that other people in the One Piece universe aren't. Archaeology is something of a lost art in the One Piece universe, and that is not by accident, but I won't go any further into it than that. And so Nico Robin here is trying to actually learn the history of the world that has forgotten its own history. I think it's incredibly fascinating. In some ways, archaeology here on Earth is a lot like that, and paleontology too. I was in a paleontology school for a while, a college, and enjoyed the heck out of it, but just couldn't keep up with the costs, and my mother broke her back, so I had to come back and help her out, So anyway, the point is, it's fascinating. It's just a really, really, really cool angle to the show, in my opinion. And it draws parallels with a Star Trek figure named Guinan. Guinan, played by Whoopi Goldberg, is a long-lived El-Orian. She knew Mark Twain. For those who don't know, Mark Twain lived before, around, and after the Civil War. So, anywhere from 180 to 140 years ago was like kind of the high of his career. Um, she runs a bar called the 10 Forward on Deck 10, Section 1. That stupid Picard show tried to give her another reason for naming it that, but it's literally called the 10 Forward because it's in Section 1 of Deck 10. It doesn't need to be some sort of great complex thing. It's something that both Roddenberry and Oda, I think, did much better than modern writers do, which is people name things after things they see all the time. You know? I just like Guinan has been around for what? It's the 24th century at this point, right? So 23. So she's been around for 500 years, and she's just gonna name things after stuff she saw 200, 300 years ago? No. No, guys. She's gonna name it, folks. Sorry. No, folks. She's gonna name it after things around her right now, so that the people she's with understand what she's talking about. You don't name your bar after something that happened to you like 45 years ago. That seems weird, you know? Anyway, Guinan, just like Nico Robin, is a mother figure to some, a source of comfort and advice to just about everyone on the Enterprise, and often an emergency crew member. There are many times in TNG she's not technically part of the Federation. I mean, I think she's part of the Federation, but she's not like part of the military part of the Federation. You know what I mean? She comes along because, well, people just like her and she gets good business and she wants to see what's going on with everybody else, right? So But there are many times where the Enterprise crew will come to her about stuff and just say, "Hey, what do we do? You've been around forever. Can you help us out?" Right? Just like Robin's use of archaeology is a source of information that nobody else has that can be used in unique ways. In a way, Guinan could be the archaeologist of the Enterprise D crew. Her knowledge of 500 plus years of history is the use is immeasurable, right? There are so many situations where something that she has learned could run parallel to a situation that they encounter and help them out, right? As I mentioned before, we are in the 24th century in TNG. Okay, so 300 years from now in the 21st century. Tony Chopper is the reindeer doctor. Sorry, I love the flow of that. I gotta say that one more time. Tony Chopper is the reindeer doctor of the Going Merry. He is a child. He's 15 years old at the start of the show. So he's a prodigy. Super smart. Super smart. His mentor is one of the best characters in One Piece. If you haven't seen that part already, that already happened on the Netflix show. But if you're curious and you haven't checked that out, you should check that out. It's great. He has very little street smarts. He's a scaredy cat sometimes, but having said that, Chopper is courageous to a fault when he locks in, and will often have his friends back when it is most needed. Um, Chopper has some very surprising moments where he comes in clutch that are just amazing. So like just be ready for that, guys. Anybody who hasn't seen One Piece yet, and people who have but have only seen the Netflix show, just if you're taking a liking to Tony Chopper, I feel like you'll take an even greater liking to him later on. Um, as I mentioned here, the Hippocratic Oath is in play. Both Chopper and the next character that we're going to talk about will treat enemy and friend alike. A life is a life, and as a doctor, Chopper values that life more than he values anything else that is going on in the world, be it politics, be it war, whatever. It doesn't matter. A life is a life is a life is a life. And my gosh, it is just so nice to hear that from sane people nowadays, considering just how chaotic things are right now. I very briefly discussed Beverly Crusher earlier, and so I wrote speaking of her. She is the mother to Wesley Crusher, Monkey D. Luffy's parallel earlier on. And while her relationship differs wildly compared to Tony Chopper's relationship to Luffy, she is still a doctor, and she will doctor regardless of whether you like it or not. She, like Chopper, is on the Enterprise to help people, not just her friends. Her experiences have matured her as a doctor, so compared to Tony, she's less naive, but also more jaded, but also has more experience. Um, Sometimes there are episodes that focus on some of the experiences that poor Beverly has had to deal with, and sometimes those situations happen while Beverly is on assignment. And it just, it's always the kind people that suffer the most, you know. So there is it's not I wouldn't call it the most in-depth thing, but there is addressing of trauma, and the things that she's had to see. I think having Tony Chopper around on the Enterprise would really help Beverly Crusher out a lot. Help her cope with things. His energy is infectious, and he is just a pure soul, and I think it would help her deal with all the stuff that happens sometimes. And just like with Tony Chopper, don't let Crusher fool you. Several characters in the Star Trek universe have made the mistake of assuming that Crusher is, uh, not a threat. at their own peril. And Chopper has that problem happen with him too, because he's so small and cute, at least initially, right? Um, so yeah, that's a bridge here. Now, I understand that the doctor parallel is a very common trope and not necessarily a personality trait that these two have in common with one another. But when these two shows' central theming is taken into consideration, I do feel it extends a little beyond the trope. Not much, but a little beyond the classic trope about doctors. Deep down, though, the things that I brought up earlier are not what make One Piece and TNG, quote, the same show, unquote. It's what these two shows encourage that makes them so similar. Exploration. Please, guys, go out and learn something new about the world. Meet those who you've never met before and learn what you were never meant to if you had stayed home all day. My favorite kids' book is The Hobbit, and it is my favorite kids book for the exact same reason. Uh, I find a lot of parallels in myself with Bilbo Baggins. I'm very much a homebody. When I was younger, I was very much worried about how the community viewed me and what people would think and how people would react and how my world would just collapse if these things weren't in a constant state of control or management, you know what I mean? But I have learned through my life, had a lot of crazy stuff happen to me that you can't you just can't control these things. You can't be worried about these things. The world is too chaotic and too quick to constantly dote on those things, guys. You've got to get out there and see what's beyond it. It is solely to your benefit when you do those things, as long as you're careful, of course. Try to see those around you from a different perspective, regardless of how you first met. Maybe you let the nigh omnipotent God annoy you forever, if it means you can hold on to your dignity as Jean Luc Picard. This is some of the more One Piece coded stuff in TNG for any curious OP fans. The omnipotent God's name is Q. Picard is to the left, and Q is above the writing. And boy, howdy, does Q push Picard more in a comical nuisance way, although there are some serious ones too. But it's a great dynamic, and I think anybody who enjoys One Piece will get a good kick out of it. Or maybe you let a clown with detachable body parts and other freaks harass you across the globe if it means you don't stoop to their level. I mean, that wouldn't be very kingly of the king of the pirates, after all. This character right here, for TNG fans, this is Buggy the Clown. Buggy the Clown is the most comedic element of the series, but I do think that TNG fans would enjoy how much Buggy just keeps doing what Buggy does. Again, for the Netflix fans, I don't want to go too far, but let's go Wuggy. I love this guy, and I think that people who get into One Piece will become attached to Buggy too. It's this theme of exploration and understanding that's the core component to both of these series and binds them together. And I think it's something we can all appreciate right now. With all of that being said, thanks for everything. I appreciate you taking time to listen. There's so much more that could be said, drawing parallels between these two, but I have to keep it to a mum, once again, as you know, for the Netflix show. Have a wonderful weekend. Let your family know that you love them. Like and subscribe if you'd be so kind. Leave a comment. And rest easy, y'all. I hope that I've brought these two shows to the consideration of each other's fandoms. They really are amazing, and there really is a lot in common that I think you'll find. Anyway, talk to y'all later. Have a great one.